On our newscast this evening, Koreans are deeply concerned as the nation's consumer price increase rate settles in the 1% range for 2 years running, a trend that could spell long-term deflation. President Barack Obama responds to the Democrats' big loss in the U.S. midterm elections, saying he will listen to the people and work with the Republican majority. Prime Minister Chung Hong-won seeks the understanding and cooperation of public servants over reforms he says are necessary to keep the pension program afloat. Stay with us for these and more.
It's 6 in the evening on Thursday, November 6th, here in Korea. Live from Seoul, I'm Laah Hyun-kyung.
And I'm Daniel Choy. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for coming back.
Well, it's good to be back.
Well, our top story this evening, the government is ramping up its drive to reform the government employee pension system.
Well, Prime Minister Chung Hong-won put in his 2 cents earlier today, calling for cooperation and understanding from the public.
His comments come after President Park Geun-hye urged the government and parliament to complete the overhaul by the year's end. Our Chosun starts us off.
In a national address on Thursday, Prime Minister Chung Hong-won called on the country's 1 million public servants to stop any group action against the Park Geun-hye administration's push to overhaul the public employee pension system.
I ask all the public servants to understand and cooperate, as the proposed reforms are inevitable and needed to reduce the financial burden on the people and to sustain the pension plan.
Government employee unions and groups staged rallies after the ruling Saenuri Party drafted a bill that would gradually delay the age at which retirees can start collecting their pensions and freeze the amount for those getting $4,000 or more each month. The pensioners would eventually end up paying more while receiving less. Referring to public criticism over inequalities between the government pension and other programs, as well as Korea's extended life expectancy, the Prime Minister directed focus on the snowballing deficit.
If the public employee pension is left unaddressed, the deficit will not only total $185 billion over the next 20 years, we will have to spend $1.2 trillion out of state coffers by 2080.
Chung then pledged to improve working conditions in public service and offer more chances for promotion. Also on Thursday, 29 vice ministerial level officials announced they will join in the reforms in a bid to provide momentum to the government drive. Choi Yu-sun, Arirang News.
With less than a month to review the details of next year's government budget, lawmakers began the process on this Thursday. Attention lies on whether they will be able to pass the budget bill by its legal deadline. If so, that will be a first in more than a decade. Ji Myung-gil has our next report.
At the Parliamentary Budget Committee on Thursday, the $346 billion set aside for next year's budget was divvied up. The government plans to allocate roughly $105 billion for welfare, $53 billion for R&D and social overhead capital, $48 billion for education, $33 billion for defense, $14 billion for safety, $4.6 billion for foreign affairs and unification, and the rest for other social costs. Next year's budget is a 5.7% increase, or $18 billion higher than this year's. Korea's finance minister urged lawmakers for swift passage of the budget bill.
Next year's budget bill should be passed as soon as possible to help boost the economy and stabilize people's livelihoods.
Lawmakers from the ruling Saenuri Party called for expanding the budget to boost Korea's slow economic recovery, while the opposition warned against tax revenue shortfalls that date back to 2012. Opposition party lawmakers also called for cutbacks in unnecessary budgets and for restoring corporate taxes for conglomerates. Prime Minister Chung Hong-won promised fiscal health to help ease concerns.
The government will accelerate physical reforms by blocking the wasting of government expenditures and bolstering punishments for those who misuse government budgets.
The two rival parties are trying to reach an agreement on the budget bill before the month ends. According to a parliamentary law revision made last year, if lawmakers fail to reach an agreement on the budget bill, the draft proposal will be automatically submitted to the plenary session on December 1st. The two rival parties are expecting a bumpy road ahead as the governing party hopes to pass the budget bill by the legal deadline of December 2nd, while the opposition party says a thorough review of the bill should be the first priority. Kim Young-gyun, Arirang News.
On the economic front, as of the end of October, Korea's consumer price increase rate has remained in the 1% range for a full 2-year period. Now, that's a first ever, and this is generating fears that the nation could be taking the same deflationary path as its neighbor, Japan. Kim Ji-yeon reports.
There are growing fears about deflation fanned by expectations consumer price increases will remain trapped in the 1% range for the second consecutive year. Statistics Korea says prices rose a mere 1.2% on year in October and were down 0.3% from the previous month. The so-called core inflation rate, which excludes oil and food, edged up 1.8% on year, but that's the slowest increase since February. Prices of agricultural livestock and fisheries products dropped 1.9% on month. At this level, some analysts worry the situation in Korea will reflect what happened in Japan in the early 1990s when Japan found itself in a long-term economic slump.
Unlike Japan in the 1990s, Korea is recording positive growth, but there is certainly a risk of deflation if low consumer prices continue for several years. We expect consumer prices to pick up next year. However, the low price trend will likely continue as global growth measures are focused on the service sector and on consumer products rather than on manufacturing.
The consumer price increase in Korea was lower than Japan's in September by 2 percentage points, the widest margin ever recorded. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Korea appears to have one of the lowest consumer sentiments in the world. A survey of 30,000 shoppers by market tracker Nielsen shows that Korea ranked 57th out of 60 countries in terms of how much the country's consumers were willing to spend from July to September. Italy, Croatia, and Serbia were the only countries that recorded lower consumer sentiment than Korea in the survey. India topped the list, followed by Indonesia, the Philippines, and Thailand. The Japanese yen is widely expected to weaken even further against the U.S. dollar next year. Analysts at J.P. Morgan say the dollar will rise to 120 yen from its current level of about 112 by the third quarter of next year. And the same was projected by Credit Suisse and Canada's National Bank Financial as well. The prediction follows the Bank of Japan's surprising announcement last week to expand its monthly asset purchases to boost its economy. The Korean government, meanwhile, is known to be seeking ways to prevent Japan from extending its quantitative easing program through international cooperation, something Seoul attempted last year to no avail. The trade ministers of Korea and China are set to lead another round of free trade negotiation talks. There are even reports now that an agreement will be announced during a summit between President Park Geun-hye and Chinese leader Xi Jinping next week. Our Shin Se-min has the details.
Korea and China will meet for a 14th round of FTA talks in Beijing this Thursday evening, where they're hoping to hammer out the final details of their bilateral trade pact. Unlike in previous negotiations where vice ministers attended, Korean Trade Minister Yoon Sang-jik and his Chinese counterpart Gao Hu-chang will be leading these talks. They hope to come to terms on an agreement before President Park Geun-hye and Xi Jinping meet next week during the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit in Beijing. According to Seoul's Trade Ministry, the two sides will be discussing all 22 chapters of the Free Trade Pact, 16 of which have been or are close to being settled. Yet differences remain on the opening of China's manufacturing sector to Korean imports and imports of Chinese agricultural produce to Korea. Korean automakers and farmers will be paying close attention to details from the meetings, as both are concerned about their bottom lines being affected by an influx of goods made in China. On liberalizing the service sector, the two have been far apart as well, with Korea wanting stricter standards than China. Free trade negotiations between Seoul and Beijing began in May of 2012. During summit talks in July, President Park Geun-hye and Xi Jinping agreed to conclude the FTA negotiations before the year ends. China is Korea's leading trade partner, with bilateral trade last year reaching nearly $230 billion. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Retail investors scramble for another day to scoop up early orders of stocks for Samsung Group affiliate Samsung SDS this Thursday. The public offering is seen as a means of giving the Samsung owner family more control over the group. Our Kwon So-wa explains.
The subscription competition rate for early investing in Samsung SDS, Samsung Group's IT services affiliate, exceeded 100-to-1 on the second and last day of its early order period. The IT services company's IPO is said to be the largest listing in the second half of this year and is ready to make its debut on Korea Stock Exchange next week. Korea Investment and Securities says a total of nearly 1.2 million shares are up for bidding. Because of its low initial public offering price of around $175, tens of thousands of subscribers rushed to pick up shares. But the fierce competition has also crushed the hopes of many investors who are hoping to add a fortune to their portfolios. The public offering comes amid expectations that Samsung SDS will rise as a key player in the structural changes that began taking shape within Samsung Group after the chairman of Samsung Electronics, Lee Gun-hee, had a massive heart attack in May. The IT service business currently has very little power within the Samsung Group's management tree, but with E's children owning a big portion of the affiliate stocks, they are trying to increase its value. Heir apparent Lee Jae-yong holds a more than 11% stake in the company. His sisters Lee Bu-jin and Lee Se-hyun both have nearly 4%. So by going public, analysts say Samsung hopes to speed up the restructuring process. Kwon So-wa, Arirang News.
A one-day entry ban. 77.
Digging deeper, getting to the bottom of stories that impact your life. Talking with you on air and online, connecting you with experts on the world's most pressing issues. News and current affairs at its best. With Laah Hyun-kyung and Daniel Choy.
Arirang News.
Arirang News.
Arirang News.
On Early Edition at 6.
Reacting to the Democrats' big loss in the U.S. midterm elections, President Barack Obama says he heard the frustration of voters. The Republicans will now have control of both houses, and the president says he's eager to work with the new Congress. Connie Lee has more.
President Barack Obama had a clear message for the American people, that he's solely focused on working for them.
I'm committed to making sure that I measure ideas not by whether they are from Democrats or Republicans, but whether they work for the American people.
At the White House on Wednesday, it was President Obama's first public appearance since the Republicans scored some great results in the midterm elections. The president vowed to work with Congress, although he stressed his administration's agenda will remain the same. However, he did acknowledge the Democrats' losses, saying it showed Americans want to see an end to the gridlock in Washington.
So to everyone who voted, I want you to know that I hear you. To the two-thirds of voters who chose not to participate in the process yesterday, I hear you too.
The Republicans will officially take control of both chambers of Congress starting in January. And Senator Mitch McConnell, who is set to be the next Senate Majority Leader, also said he was committed to working with the Democrats.
First thing I need to do is to get the Senate back to normal. That means working more. This gridlock and dysfunction can be ended.
The Republicans' strong showing gives them the momentum going into the 2016 presidential elections. However, some believe the GOP still has its work cut out.
It's still yet to be demonstrated that Republicans can do well in a national presidential race when those people vote.
Connie Lee, Arirang News.
And now attention swings away from the midterms and ahead to 2016. That's, of course, when Americans will head to the polls to pick their next president. Kim Hyun-bin reports on some of the names that may be on that ballot.
The 2014 midterm elections in the United States have come to close, but already people are looking ahead to 2016, to presidential elections. Who will run, and what clues might campaigning ahead of the midterms provide? Former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, who is expected to announce in the coming months whether she'll run, was busy leading up to Election Day, barnstorming around the country to 18 states to lend support to Democratic nominees.
Who's going to be there for you? Who cares about you? Who works for you?
Across the political aisle, possible Republican candidates for president were just as busy. Former presidential candidate Mitt Romney, who says he won't run again, but remains a favorite among his base, made his presence known on the campaign trail.
This is really the last chance for America to pass judgment on the Obama administration and on its policies.
Jeb Bush, the former governor of Florida and brother to former President George W. Bush, is another name being thrown around as a possible Republican Party nominee. So is current New Jersey Governor Chris Christie.
When our Republican Party is at its best, we can walk and chew gum at the same time.
While the political heavyweights were out promoting other candidates under the banner of their party, it's not a stretch to assume they were also testing the waters for a possible presidential run in 2 years' time. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
The Spanish nursing assistant, the first person to contract Ebola outside of West Africa, has been discharged following more than a month of treatment. The 44-year-old had been kept at the Madrid hospital for follow-up care for about 2 weeks after being declared Ebola-free. In a press conference, she expressed her gratitude and said it was memories of family and her husband that had kept her going. She added she still did not know what exactly led her to catch the disease. Meanwhile, figures from the Africa Governance Initiative show that infection rates in Sierra Leone spiked 9-fold to a daily average of 12 new Ebola cases late last month from 1.3 cases seen at the start of September. Shifting gears to a different story now, Russian President Vladimir Putin edged out his American counterpart for a second year in a row to top this year's list of world's most powerful people. Forbes editors made their selections of figures who rule the world based on factors such as scope of impact, financial resources, and use of power. U.S. President Barack Obama and Chinese leader Xi Jinping rounded out the top three, while Korea's President Park Geun-hye moved up 6 notches from last year, placing at 46th, 3 slots ahead of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Samsung Group chairman Lee Gun-hee and his son Lee Jae-yong also made a presence at 35th place. Delegates in Busan attending the International Telecommunications Union meeting have passed a Korean-led resolution that aims to connect the world via the internet. The so-called Connect 2020 resolution aims to ensure that 55% of the world's households have access to the internet by 2020, while cutting the price of ICT or information communications technology services by 40%. It also plans to foster access and use of ICT and bridge the digital divide. If implemented on schedule, 15% of households from underdeveloped countries will also have access to the net by the target year. Keeping our eyes fixated in the port city of Busan, where the Plenipotentiary Conference is held, Science and Creativity Festival is being held on the sidelines to provide a playing field for students with aims to boost their creativity. Our Connie Kim highlights some of the innovative concepts and scientific inventions that will permeate into our lives.
You can see it, try it, and feel it. It's ICT, Information and Communications Technology, combined with science technology, which has become a vital part of our daily lives. Smart classrooms seek to provide education to students all over the world. This can be seen in one of the smart classrooms that Korea is seeking to make available all over the world. Be it in disaster-affected regions or in rural communities, this container-reformed smart classroom can charge itself through solar panels on the roof. This smartboard, for example, asks students to draw lines on the board to make the same 4 shapes. Now, by sending the same screen to students via their tablet PC textbooks, everyone gets an opportunity to try it out. In addition to the smart technology, students during the Korea Science and Creativity Festival were also able to engage in experiments and activities that came together under the umbrella of science and IT.
Snowboarding combined with science was such an amazing experience. I would like to see more of these.
For the exhibitors, they say it's an opportunity to meet people and promote their newest technology.
A lot of students seem to be amazed when they see 3D printers. By showing people how objects get printed in 3D, it's an opportunity to promote them.
It's these science technologies that the Science Ministry believes are going to be the growth engines of Korea's economy. During the annual Science and Creativity Festival held on the sidelines of the ITU Plenipotentiary Conference, hundreds of schools, institutions, and companies have laid out some 400 creative programs that may become a part of our everyday lives in the very near future. Connie Kim, Arirang News, Busan.
And if you remember, at the beginning of that transition from the analog to the digital era were ebooks or digital books, and apparently they're now no longer mere replicas of their printed versions.
That's right. The possibility is infinite with words like e-ink and ubiquitous becoming something that we throw every day in our lives. And of course, smartphones and tablets are becoming bigger and more wider, making it easier for people who are reading ebooks. So ebook makers are definitely trying to take full advantage of the situation. Our Park Ji-won has this story.
Beaver and Red Boots is a children's ebook that boasts diverse interactive features like animations, pop-up images, and other visual effects. The book's adorable characters and detailed interactive tools earned the ebook this year's Best Digital Publishing Award from the Culture Ministry.
We have focused on less flashy features and more on creating interactive features that help children develop their abilities to think and comprehend the story.
This is a children's ebook on the solar system. Thanks to the graphics and interactive features, children are taught complicated scientific concepts like what causes tides and how the moon's shadow creates solar eclipses. Then what about this driver's guidebook that features a direct link to a Google map so that readers can spot a recommended location and drive to the spot? Just as these digital books show, ebooks are no longer reserved to being replicas of their printed versions. Executive Director of the International Digital Publishing Forum, Bill McCoy, says digital contents of today should be called digital natives.
I think that digital natives, the younger generation who's growing up with digital devices, they're going to expect the content on those devices to be native for the digital platform, not just a replica of paper anymore.
McCoy says education is an area in which ebooks will grow rapidly over the next 5 years. In Korea, however, the digital book market is still in its infancy. It accounted for just about 2% of the total publishing market last year, far below the global average of some 13%, leaving much room for growth. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Well, these days, many people are getting sick due to the temperature gaps between the days and nights, and present company not accepted.
Yes, there's one example right here. You're looking at one, but I understand the Find Us from China is making its way toward us. For details, let's turn things over to Kim Bo-kyung at the Weather Center. Bo-kyung.
Good evening, guys. And yes, that unwanted guest from China is back. Now, readings are at 116 micrograms per cubic meter over in Cheonan, which is about 2 to 3 times the normal level. So those with respiratory problems must take extra caution, and Find Us will gradually clear out by later tonight. At the moment, as you can see, clouds are moving from the west to the east, leading to clear skies for most regions due to a high pressure front from China. Well, there is a possibility of showers along the eastern coast later tonight, and about 5 to 10 millimeters will drop in those areas. Otherwise, elsewhere can expect another autumn day. The winds will get stronger, leading to a drop in morning lows tomorrow, and we're looking at about a 7-degree drop from compared to today, that is. So make sure to bundle up when heading out. Here are the readings for tomorrow. Seoul reaches 15, Daegu and Gwangju 17. As for other regions, Daejeon and Jeju make it to the mid-teens, Dokdo 13, Mount Kumgang drops to -2 in the morning. Those are the updates we're following at this hour. I'll be back with more after 8.
Thank you for that, Bo-kyung. That's all we have for you at this hour. Thank you for staying with us. If you're tuning in from different time zones, do have a wonderful day. This has been Daniel Choy.
And I'm Laah Hyun-kyung, wishing our viewers in Korea a great evening. More news coming up at 8 p.m. Korea time on Arirang. Bye-bye for now.